But welcome. Well, kind of feel like we've been starting and stopping, so we're actually starting now. I think we're actually going to meet every week from here on, so hopefully that will be good. We had a holiday and everything else in there, so how's things going so far? Learning all kinds of things, aren't you? How are you feeling about care planning? Just kind of getting started, right, with that? Is that coming soon? I think it's this week or next week, I thought. You're getting started with that. Working on math calculations? Okay. What else are you working on? Trying to get through all this new first test, absolutely. So trying to get all that stuff done as well. Okay, well, what I want to kind of go over today and help you with is healthy nutrition. It doesn't take you very long to know that anytime you turn on any electronic device, look at the TV if you still get to do that, or anywhere you look, we talk a lot about healthy nutrition. We talk a lot about what we put in our bodies. It really isn't until recently that we've actually realized there's a scientific method behind what we eat and how it correlates with our health. Now, nurses knew this long ago. We're always the smartest ones out there, and we always figure it out. People don't always listen to us until a little later on. And so that's one of the things I think we're starting to see is the value of what we eat. Your Chapter 8, which is your Fahey book that goes over nutrition, has a lot of good information and overview. I'm going to kind of weave that in today and talk about that. That's probably going to be the information that you really want to be responsible for and not forget, because you're not only going to have it on our first exam in a couple weeks, but you're also going to see it on NCLEX. So we're going to talk today a little bit about some sample questions that we might use for healthy nutrition, not only for yourself and your personal health, but also for some of the performance tests you have to do. But then I also have included a lot of personal information that hopefully you can share with patients. You can use for your own information. You all come with a lot of information about healthy nutrition as well. And so I'm hoping that all of that together is going to help to make that richer for you. How many of you have taken a nutrition course? A few of you. Okay. We're finding less and less people have, since it's not a requirement for our pre-nursing anymore. We really chose several years ago to start to weave in our healthy nutrition into what we thought nurses needed, so that we could hopefully tweak that a little bit and help you with that instead of requiring you to have that full class. So, are we what we eat? Probably. All right. On some days, you probably don't want us to be what we eat, right? I'm going to show you a video clip in just a minute from a movie called Food Matters. In about a month, I think it is, you're going to have a week where we don't meet. And you're going to spend that week hopefully looking at this video, as well as doing a discussion board posting about some of the concepts from it, what you learned from it, maybe you've watched it before, how it relates to you. So I'm going to show you a video clip of that in just a couple minutes. Though I want you to think for a few minutes first about the little red sports car you see there. Okay. Now, to a lot of you, that little red sports car looks like really outdated, because I'm much older than all of you, all right? But that was my first car. I mean, that was like my first car that I earned money for and everything. I still remember it really well because it was 16% interest at that time. All right? And so if you think about today, that's a really big deal. And I remember buying this car, and I remember driving it to my job, and I was single, and I had a little red sports car, and I thought it was just top of the world. And that little car, I just loved. And I think about that little car many times, because I think about what if that was the only car I ever got. I sure paid enough for it. But what if that was the only one I got? How would I have taken care of it? Well, I did a pretty decent job of taking care of it. I actually had it for almost 20 years. In that process, it was stolen once, 2 months before my wedding. They took the doors off. They found it on the side of the road. They were trying to do more, but they must have gotten caught because, there were a lot of parts that would have been gone that weren't, okay? So, like I was foolish, I loved my car, so my dad helped me get my car rebuilt, which is really kind of exciting for me because I was like, I'm going to get a brand new car. It's going to be really neat. That car was never the same. It was just like I always knew someone had been in my car. I always knew someone had taken pieces of my car away that were not going to be returned. Well, the story even kind of goes on because then I met my husband, who then inherited the car. So we got a different car because, of course, we were a family, you know. And so he got to drive that car. Okay, well, that was not always his most exciting thing. Then when we moved from Kansas to Minnesota, not to Minnesota, but to South Dakota, he got to haul the car. Isn't that nice of him? He got to haul it all the way. And so what I want you to understand is that car was very special to me, and it was something that I tried to take as good care of it as I could. Many times I think about that car and I think about our bodies. And our bodies are like a car. We only get one. Now we can tweak it, right? If our doors come off, we can put new ones on, right? There's so many things we can do. Our body will maybe never be like it was when we were 22, but there's a lot we can do to it. But I always think about, if I'm only given one body, why would I take better care of a car than my body? And so start to think about that as to what you do, what you see nurses do as you enter the hospital in a few weeks, and how you see the end result. Where do you want to be? What do you want to be like? Life happens. I understand that. We don't always make good choices. Heavens, I know I don't. But what we do on a day-to-day basis is a big predictor of our lifestyle later on in our health outcomes. It's also a huge predictor of how our patients respect us. If we actually walk the talk, it's amazing how much better our patients are going to relate to us. So think about that as you see that. I'm going to go ahead and play just a quick video clip of Food Matters. Just a little trailer to kind of, if you haven't seen it, entice you to when you will see it in a couple of weeks or a few weeks. Until everybody's using it this morning.
One of the best things terrorists could do is just build more fast food restaurants. Maybe add another pharmaceutical company, have a couple more commercials, and encourage people to eat the way they eat now. And everybody's going to be dead in 100 years. They can just walk right in, don't have to do a thing.
1/4 of what you eat keeps you alive, and 3/4 of what you eat keeps your doctor alive.
Cancer rates going up, heart disease going up, stroke going up.
We're poisoning ourselves with highly processed, nutrient-depleted foods.
One of the major problems is what we do to the soil and the air and the water and everything we take in our food.
We, for whatever reason, decided we're going to spray everything with every kind of pesticide, herbicide, larvicide, fungicide. We decided we're going to genetically modify things we don't know anything about. Can we actually improve what has already been created? And the answer is maybe, but not the way we've been doing it.
If you want to know, look down at the table. It's staring back at you.
Think of it as chronic malnutrition, because that's what's going on.
But if we think we're going to go to the doctor and get a pill for everything, we've missed the whole point. We have been taught our whole lives to be consumers of modern medicine, which is pharmaceutical medicine. Good health makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't make a lot of dollars.
The drug industry has every right to make money. The question about the ethics, I think, need to be very closely watched.
What the pharmaceutical companies are doing may not necessarily be in the interest of our population.
You could be as sincere if you could be sincerely wrong.
Approximately 106,000 Americans die from pharmaceutical drugs each year. And these are people who took the medication as directed.
There's a lot more turning to alternatives, because what's
no magic bullet, but there is a lifestyle change that reverses serious chronic disease. It's cheap, it's simple, it's safe, it's effective.
The solutions are here. They've always been here. Every single person in the world, every culture, every language, every person in the world knows it. You are what you eat. Food does matter.
It's a choice. You don't have to be the same.
Anybody seen the video? Well, you're going to get to. You're going to even get, I'm going to even tell you to like make popcorn and everything. So it kind of then leads into another quote we've heard before. Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. If you haven't probably been to Barnes & Noble lately and looked at self-help resources, where you've been as a vendor scene, if you've gotten lucky enough to be to Barnes & Noble or you've looked at Amazon or any of those things, you've probably been looking at nursing information. But there's tons of self-help resources that are out now about healing, nutritional healing for cancer, nutritional healing for diabetes. All of our chronic diseases that we know are number one have a nutrition component to them. And so that's what I kind of want us to start to think about today is how does food play a role into all of this? Things that probably are not new to you. We have two kinds of nutrients that we need, the macronutrients. To me, those are the ones I like. Those are the ones that give me energy. Proteins, the fats, the carbohydrates, and yes, we do need to still drink water. Micronutrients, those are going to be things like our vitamins and minerals. We don't need them in as big amounts, but they make a huge difference. If you don't believe that, if you've ever had a vitamin deficiency, you'll know once you add that back into your body, it makes a huge difference. So we need both of those as we kind of work together. How our food is digested makes a huge difference as well. This is another area that we're really learning more about as we see more and more digestive diseases popping up, things like gastroesophageal reflux disease or GERD. We see a lot of the inflammatory bowel, the irritable bowel, a lot of those things are coming out. And we wonder, why are we hearing about those today? Are they new, or have people had them and they just are coming forward? And one of the things we're starting to realize is what we're eating and how it's made makes a huge difference in how our body processes it and what happens with it. So how we digest that makes a real big difference. We also know that there's a lot of inflammation that comes from things that we put into our body. Obviously, we all have our own set of genes. We really can't change that a whole lot. We're trying, but we can't yet. And so what we come with, what our package is, makes a lot of difference in how we digest that, how we affect that. But a lot of that systemic inflammation does come from some of the things that we put into our body. So how are we going to cure our digestion? Maybe you found that there's some days you just feel a lot better than others. Maybe some days you're more bloated. Maybe some days you have more irregularity. And you wonder, why is that? Have you ever stopped to think about what was it that you ate? What's going on in your life? So we really want to think about a healthy gut. That's kind of another new word that you hear out there is healthy gut. We want to think about how can we change our flora in our gut to be more healthy so that it actually is going to have some of the good bacteria versus the bad bacteria. That's going to help to digest our foods better. It's actually going to make us feel better. We're going to get our genes on a little bit more comfortable, right? So there's going to be a lot of things that could go on with that. We want to think about sugar. We want to think about refined grains, and we want to think about processed foods. How is our food made? Where does it come from? We want to think about how important fiber is. You know all about all the other fiber-rich foods. You know we need to eat fruits and vegetables and all that. Things like flax, some of the newer things that are out there that help to also promote fiber. We want to think about antifungals, things that are going to actually kill some of the bad bacteria. So it's okay to have some spices. It's okay to have some fats, such as the good oils. A newer category of food that's coming out is called fermented foods. Doesn't really sound real appealing, but it's kind of like our yogurts that we eat. We want to think about things like sauerkraut. You're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't like sauerkraut. Kimchi is another type that's very similar to that. Pickles that have been not processed. We're not talking about those of them that have 12 and 15 grams of sugar that sit on the shelf for 2 years, all right? We're talking about real pickles, pickles that are made, put in a glass jar. We're talking also about yogurt. We're also talking about something called kefir. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit too. Those are more of a fermented probiotic food that are going to help to enhance our healthy gut and make us feel a little bit better. We also have learned that there's some information coming forward, not that it's all or none, about grains and the effect of grains. Anybody went to Panera and noticed that now they have a sprouted grain bagel? Well, why do they have a sprouted grain bagel? I've never seen that before. That has a lot to do with what we're looking at as grains and how grains are really hard for our body to process, how a lot of those grains turn into sugar, which isn't really what we need, and how can we make grains easier to digest, and one of those ways is sprouted grains. We also want to think about chocolate in a new way. Now, I love chocolate, all right? One of the things that you're going to hear me talk about today is the greater percentage of cocoa, the better that is for you. So those of you that are milk chocolate lovers like me kind of had to take a little bit of a step back and say, I still want my chocolate. So if I do a healthier chocolate, I don't have to count it as much. Ooh, that sounds good, all right? So there's some things that are coming about that we're still trying to figure out, but I want you to be aware of some of the new things that are out there. All right, so now I'm going to get really personal. When you came to nursing school, you knew you were going to have to look at other people's poop, right? But you probably never thought your instructor was going to tell you to look at your poop, all right? TMI, we don't need you to share this morning, all right? But I want you to think about if your poop was in a pageant, which contestant you would be, because your poop says a lot about your digestion, your eating habits, and how healthy you are. Imagine that, all right? We get really obsessed about urine and poop in the hospital with our patients, don't we? We describe it, we want to know the amount, we want to know how it looked, we tell them they have to save it, don't flush so we can go look at it, right? Well, I'm going to tell you to do the same thing with yourself and also with your patients. So, if you are contestant number 1 over here, Miss Ideal, your poop is medium brown, forms kind of an S or a C, and it's really pretty much the winner of the pageant, all right? This is what we want you to be, okay? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. The next one is Miss Show-Off. Miss Show-Off is Show-Off because they're so proud of the food they ate, it didn't all digest. So when you go to the bathroom, you may have noticed that sometime, you've got all these pieces of food in there and you're like, well, that's probably not a good sign. If that food didn't digest, you just sent it through your body. All right? So that's also another type. The third contestant, Miss Runny, she really has a really hard time keeping her poop together. Okay? You may notice that sometimes if you have an allergy or a sensitivity to foods, you may notice you ate something and it just didn't agree with you and you notice that happens. Your body's trying to tell you something. Miss Rocky, this is the person that's dehydrated, really is stressed, and really has an imbalance just because there's not enough fluid to probably pull that feces through. And so they probably are having to take some laxatives to help with that. People may have told them to increase their fiber. You may know you need to do that when you see that. The next contestant, Miss Muscles, is really a little bit thicker and harder to pass, but it's not like Miss Rocky over here, all right? So you may notice that. Maybe you've had a really big meal and you noticed that it was a little bit harder for you to go to the bathroom, all right? Miss Swim Team. Miss Swim Team I'm more concerned about. It's lighter in color. It's really basically just went through your body, hasn't really had a lot of time to digest. This is a lot of times people that are eating lots and lots of fats, lots and lots of like processed foods. And also you could have a gallbladder issue if you start noticing a change in your poop. And this is Miss Toxic. Notice she's holding her soda as she's in the contest. And this is someone that's really got more dark in color. It has a foul smell to it, and it really is probably going to be affected by a lot of processed foods, all right? More information than you ever wanted to know, right? So think about what is your poop telling you about how your body's digesting foods. We know proteins are important. We know proteins give us about 4 calories per gram. That's going to be important when we talk about food labels. They give us energy. They help to break down some different things in our body, so they're really important in that sense. They are composed of a lot of amino acids. No, I'm not going to ask you what those all are, but I am going to want you to know what protein does. There are 9 essential amino acids that we need that come from animal and plant sources. We know that it's very easy for us to consume too much protein, but we also know that many times that's what we need to kind of help our brains, to help our energy level, to kind of sustain us. As you think about some of the different foods that I talk about in some of the different categories, think about some of the different food sources. I work with student success to kind of look at how you do when you get to nutrition questions related to HESI and NCLEX. And some of the things that I find is that you really need to think about food sources. So start to think about, where do proteins come from? So if we asked you that question, you could do that. When you're eating food, think about what type of source it is, where it's going to be the highest. A lot of people don't realize that bread and cereal is going to give you some protein. But we're probably going to remember that there's a lot of others there, eggs, meat, fish, poultry, that are going to give us a lot more protein. So those are going to be some of our higher ones. Fats have kind of gotten a bad rap, haven't they? We kind of went into that several years ago. We went into that fat-free. Okay, and we said, if fat's bad for you, then nobody needs to have fat. Well, then we realized, well, if we take out the fat, we got to put something in there. So then we had sugar and salt and preservatives and everything else added, all right? Then we realized, that's really probably not the best, because people were still gaining weight, their cholesterol levels were still going up. So we really learned kind of the hard way that fat, we need fat. It's the type of fats. What do fats do? They're important for our energy. They work well with protein. But we also know that there's different types that are going to be important. We know we have triglycerides that are going to be important in our body. We just don't want to have too many, because if we have too many circulating, then we're going to be storing those in our fat cells, and we really don't need any extra triglycerides around for very long. Some's okay, not too much. The unsaturated, the monounsaturated, those are going to be those good oils that you hear us talk about, the olive, the safflower, the canola, some of the peanut oils as well. The polyunsaturated, those are going to be some that you have probably heard us talk about even more earlier on. The corns, the soybean, the cottonseed, all right? We really tend to go more now to the monounsaturated. We're finding more benefits from them. And then we also know that the saturated meats, limiting those, the red meats, the dairy. But again, remembering we need some of everything. So if you look at some of the fat facts, and some of these posters and some of these pictures I may not have put in your slides just because I knew they'd be really, really tiny, and I'd rather you pay for something you can read than something you can't read. But when you look at some of this, it just kind of breaks down for you the mono, the poly, looking at some of the saturated fats, looking at where does our fat come from, and then some of the trans fats, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those being the worst of the three. The trans fat, when we talk about that, we're really referring to hydrogenation. So when you think about trans fat, what do you think about? Pardon? What? Say it again.
Like Crisco, not all.
Okay. All right. So what's the difference then between a trans fat and a saturated fat? Pardon? Because you're actually turning something liquid into something hard, right? The hydrogenation process does that, right? And so when we're looking for saturated fats, they're going to be identified on food label, right? Trans fats are going to be kind of sneaky. They're going to be things like palm and coconut oils that we see in the label, the partially hydrogenated, some vegetable, some of those oils as well. So they're going to be there, but because you only have to have 0.5 grams or less, and you don't have to record it that, so it has to be more than that for it to be recorded, you could still see that 0 trans fat on the label, but it could still have some of the partially hydrogenated, right? The way it was explained to me by a nutrition friend, which I think is probably a good way to help me remember it, is saturated fat is the candle, trans fat is the melting of the wax. So when you see that candle after you burned it for a little bit and that wax comes down that candle, that's the trans fat. All right. Now, both of those don't sound really good to go into any of our vessels, right? We don't really want any of those in our veins and arteries. But when you think about saturated fat, it's going to be of a harder substance that probably we're going to be able to see. We identify it as plaque. Trans fat coats that vessel. So it actually changes the cellular level and it changes the structure of that vessel. And so as that trans fat continues to kind of, for lack of a better word, melt and coat your vessels, it not only changes it, but it makes fat stick to it more. So when we look at the two, sources really tell us trans fat is far worse than saturated fat. Now we know we need to limit trans fat, but when you look at sources about trans fat, they really say we need to completely avoid it. Cholesterol, we went another thing. We went all the way around that block, didn't we? And we said, oh, no cholesterol. We can't eat anything with cholesterol. We all got egg beaters. We went to IHOP with our family, and we were like, okay, I'll only have one egg, or I'll have whites, and whites are good, or I'll just order the egg substitute. And I was talking to somebody, and they had worked in the food industry. They said, you know, it's so funny, now we don't sell as much egg substitute anymore. I said, no, because people are getting smarter and knowing that we really still need to have eggs. Eggs are okay. We just don't want to eat too many. We don't want to have too many of the yolks, but the yolks are good for us, you know. And so we really got all nervous because they had a lot of cholesterol. Well, then we heard about a year or two ago, cholesterol's good for us. We need cholesterol. And we're all like, what? What? So we really do. So it's a waxy substance, but it's a good one. It's absorbed more. It helps the cells do what they need to do, okay? Big difference between that and trans fat. So when you're looking at trans fat labels, okay, and you grab something that you're going to eat, all right, and you see that it has 5 grams of fat, of which 1 gram is saturated, and if it does register, 1.5 grams is a lot of trans fat, all right? Remember, you can have just a little bit, and it's not going to be on the label. But if you have 1.5, that's a pretty good amount. I know you can have 4, and I know you can have 5. Those are really bad. So if you have saturated fat at 1 and you have trans fat at 1.5, your combined amount is 2.5 grams of saturated fat with trans fat in there. That's one of the worst combinations you can get, all right? It's better if you're going to have saturated fat if you have only the saturated fat, no trans fat, and there's none of these other ingredients listed in the label. I'm going to show you that in a minute. So as of January 2006, the FDA said we have to put trans fat on our labels, all right? There's a movement now to try to get trans fat listed so that we can actually know if trans fat's in all of our foods, even at the 0.5 grams and below. But we're smarter than them, so we know to read the labels, and the labels are going to tell us, okay? So if you haven't looked for trans fat, let me help you. Hydrogenated palm kernel oil, partially hydrogenated palm oil, partially hydrogenated palm kernel oil. All right, they have to list everything. Of course, obviously, you know, if it's farther down the list, it's better. But if it's in the label, it's still considered trans fat. And by the way, sugar is the first one listed. Okay? All right? Come over here. Trans fat 0, 7 grams, 4 cookies, 7 grams, 4.5 are saturated. Trans fat is 0, partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. Obviously, yours won't be yellowed in, sorry. Hydrogenated oils. And then you come down here and you look at some margarines. It's there, it's listed. So it's everywhere, all right? I mean, not everywhere, but in a lot of things. So be smart about reading it. If you want to consume trans fat, then use the label to know which ones have it in it so you make good choices, right? If you want to teach people how to find trans fat, Please don't tell them if it's not labeled in the label that there's none in it, because that's just not true anymore, all right? And also be able to show them how they have to include their trans fat in their saturated fat amount. So then it kind of makes you maybe think about this cartoon. The guys in the little Quickie Mart, don't you sell anything without the dreaded trans fat acids? And you see in the corner the little newspaper says, trans fat labels now required on food by FDA. And the guy says, sure, we do sell cigarettes, you know. So you may feel like that sometime, that it's everywhere. Is our goal to not have fun during life and not eat? No, that is not our goal. Our goal is to enjoy our life. Everything in moderation. I just want you to be aware and help your patients to be aware that if trans fat is something that you're trying to avoid, you know where to look, because marketing is very sneaky on how they can get it into products. How does our fat affect our health? Well, we know that our LDL is important because that's going to be an accumulation of our fat. That's really kind of our denser fat. That's our worst fat. We know that's going to be more from saturated and trans fats, okay? So those things are going to raise that level. We know our HDL is a blood fat, but it helps to get cholesterol through our body, so we know that we want to have more HDL than LDL. We change periodically on the numbers on that. When we talk about healthy women and men, we'll talk about a healthy lipid panel and what it looks like. But this is so important, our HDL is so important, that if we have a higher number, it actually negates one of our lower numbers or one of our risk factors. So it's really, really important that people learn to know their numbers early on, all right? We have very high LDL levels on kids below the age of 15 today, all right? And I think that's going to be improving as we start to think about and become more educated about what we eat. But kids are kids, right? The thinking that we used to have is that we can eat what we want when we're a kid, because when we're older, we'll eat better. That's kind of going away. Darn, right? So think about HDL, think about LDL, but think about how it works in your body and why it's important. You need fat, you know. How many people have I talked to that have had a heart issue happen? And they're like, I just can't have any more fat. And they start picking all the fat-free stuff. And then they come in and then their blood sugar is like 201, you know. And you're like, well, wait a minute, you know, we need a combination. You need some fat. Well, let's talk about that. Sources for cholesterol, animal products, egg yolks. Some of your organ meats are going to be higher than that. A lot of people are concerned. We're concerned more about eggs again. If you don't have an allergy to eggs, eggs are a great protein source. They give you the right kind of fat. As long as you don't eat 5 eggs for your egg burrito, like my son sometimes does, I think you're probably good. Then add some whites in there. Your monounsaturated fats, duck and goose, eggs again, olive and peanut oils. You're starting to hear a lot more about olive oil as well, and we're going to talk about that too. So good sources for those. Polyunsaturated is going to be more your corn, safflower, and sunflower. Those are good oils, but they're not as good. And a lot of that has to do with what we're doing to the corn, what we're doing to the vegetables, call them vegetables. By the time we're done, they really aren't. But we do a lot of processing to them. And so again, we're trying to go back to getting away from making some different things out of what we have. Saturated fats, beef, butter. You're hearing a lot more about why it's okay to use a little bit of butter than margarines that have the trans fats in them. Hard yellow cheeses, luncheon meats, all things that we should eat in minimal amounts, but still okay to have a little bit. So if we were going to talk about a heart-healthy diet, and there's a lot of people out there that talk about it, one of my newest finds is this MD, who actually I think has it figured out to a certain point because he understands nutrition. His name is Dr. Masley. He has a new book out called The 30-Day Heart Tune-Up. It is for anybody that wants to look at their heart health and think about what could they do. It doesn't matter your age, but it helps you to kind of think about some principles. One of the first things he says you really need to think about is how much fiber are you getting, all right? If you have to take a fiber substitute, if you have to take Miralax, FiberCon, that's okay, but we'd rather that you first start looking at your diet, all right? Fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains, just small amounts. There's some information, like I said, coming out about inflammation. So see how you do with grains. If grains cause you a lot of GI distress, they may not be for you. Nuts, peanuts are a legume. They are not a nut, all right? And so It's okay to eat a few peanuts, but it's hard to count them really as that nut source that we sometimes think about. So we're thinking there more about cashews, almonds, those kinds of things. Healthy fats, it may be time for you to think about an oil change. Total fat, you do need to know this. We tell people they should not have more than 20 to 30% of their total calories that come from total fat. All right? We want them to limit saturated fats. So if they have a history of heart disease, or they have a heart condition, then we're going to probably have them closer to 12 to 20 grams, no more than 12 to 20 grams of fat per day. If they have heart disease, we're going to probably lower that to about 15. So generally, for most people without a heart issue, we're going to look at no more than 20 to 30% of their total calories per day that should come from fat. All right? No more than half of that should be saturated unless it's fast. If you have a heart condition, then it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to lower that a little bit, all right? And that's going to depend a lot upon your doctor, your situation, what's going on with you. We know we want to avoid or limit trans fats or hydrogenated fats. Again, the palm oil, the palm kernel oil, partially hydrogenated. Pick the good fats, the fish, the avocado, the nuts. Yes, they have calories. I hear that all the time. People are like, nuts have calories, I don't want to eat anymore. Well, you know what? Nuts are going to fill you up. So yeah, they have more calories, but they have the good fat. Hopefully they're going to keep you from wanting to eat that Snickers, or maybe that's where you count your nuts, right? The right cooking oil. Well, we're trying to get there on this one. How many of you use olive oil? How many of you use something other than canola, safflower, sesame? Okay. Olive oil, everything you know is always a little bit confusing at first. Extra virgin olive oil is an olive oil that's not meant for high heat. What happens if you use it at high heat is, first of all, there's a taste that comes with it. That may not be bad, but it actually changes the chemical of the oil and has some carcinogens that are released. So they tell us extra virgin oil, not good to use in the skillet. Virgin olive oil, you can use in the skillet, but it still breaks down a little bit. You're still going to have a little bit of a taste to it. And it's not as good. Avocado oil is better, but it's not as bad as the extra virgin at the top. Avocado oil. Anybody try avocado oil? Wonderful. Do you like it when you use it? Okay. Do you taste any different? A little bit? Yeah. So it's one of those things you might want to try. It actually is a high heat cooking oil. It works really good on popcorn. I know I've used it on lots of other things that I, will usually if I fry a little bit or anything like that, if I just need to grease my pan. There is a little bit of a different taste to it. I don't notice it a lot, but there's a little bit of difference to it. Another oil you hear a lot more about is coconut or sesame oil. The cardiologist group and the nutrition group don't quite agree on coconut oil. They know there's benefits to it, but if you have a heart healthy, condition where you don't have to worry about it, coconut oil is probably fine. But if you are really having to watch your saturated fat, coconut oil is one of the most saturated fats out there. But again, a little bit. It's kind of like butter. It's probably okay. But again, know that as well. So kind of in the middle, the virgin olive oil, that's the one you find a lot of places. And the avocado oil are going to be better for heating as well. If you're going to be cooking, make sure that you check to see if you like the taste. If you substitute the oils, because they don't always taste the same, and sometimes you need a different amount from one oil to the other for measuring. Other things we're going to tell you to think about is lean, not mean proteins. Again, a lot of this kind of stuff as well. Making sure that you kind of try to stay with some of the yogurts, and if you want to do non-fat, you sure can. If you want to do half fat, you can do that as well. Beneficial beverages, we do tell you that it's okay to have a little bit of wine. That's always kind of nice, isn't it? Limit your caffeine, protein-rich drinks, unsweetened cocoa. a very, very healthy benefit for hot chocolate. So if you're one of those people that wants to get rid of the sugar from hot chocolate, you can do unsweetened cocoa. There's also some sweeteners that you can add, that are more natural as well. Honey's one of those. Fabulous flavors, the garlic, the herbs, the spices, and then again, other things that are really going to be good if you have that chocolate craving. You can just do maybe a really good candy bar. You can do like maybe a little square of it or half of it or whatever you need. But 70% greater or that on cocoa, any of your candy bars are going to give you more health benefits than going to the milk chocolate. But I know a lot of people like the milk chocolate, so know that as well. So that's a little bit better too. So those are just some heart-healthy principles that are out there. Use them, pass them on if they work for you. Okay, so then we went from the fat-free revolution to the carb revolution, right? And we said, okay, well now we got to figure out carbs because everybody's liking carbs, okay? So we kind of went to those little 100-calorie packages. And for a while we had the Snackwell cookies, and then we had tons of different kinds that came out. And then we went to little 100-calorie chips, which is good. That's portion control. So then everybody was eating carbs, and they didn't have much fat in them, and then we were still gaining weight, and our sugars were still high, and we're like, well, maybe we're not supposed to eat all this crunchy, fun stuff, okay? Carbs are good. You know they are. It's just the type of carbs that we choose, right? Doesn't mean we can't have chips. So when you think about carbs, they have 4 calories per gram, so when you're looking at those are going to be a little bit less than when you're looking at the protein. We know that carbs quickly turns into sugar, which is why we many times then have to kind of think about why, what are we eating, how much are we eating, or put it with a protein source. We know there's the simple carbs, which are going to be the fruit, milk, and sweeteners. Those are the ones that give us that quick energy. They taste good. We like them. They kind of satisfy our sweet tooth. And then the complex ones that are going to be more the fruits and vegetables and the cereals and grains and that kind of stuff. You probably remember monosaccharides. Remember, they're kind of that simplest sugar, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen together. And they're really just building blocks for the others. So when we think about the types of sugars that are out there, so molasses, cherries, yogurt, all of those are going to eventually turn into a sugar, which is okay. And disaccharides are more of that double sugar. They're combined of those 2 monosaccharides. Those are things like sucrose, table sugar, lactose, which is that milk sugar, which obviously sometimes people have an intolerance to. And then probably your favorite, the maltose, which is your beer sugar. We know sugar is kind of bittersweet. We know we need some of it. We just probably don't need the amounts or the number of carbs that we eat that turn into sugar. Women, no more than 6 teaspoons per day, which sounds like a lot. Many of you are thinking that's easy to do because I don't put sugar on anything. Well, look at what you're eating. You may have already 6 teaspoons in the stuff you're consuming. No more than 9 grams for men, all right? And then we think about something called glycemic index. Many times you hear people talk about glycemic index and how the food they eat, how quickly it turns into sugar. So those are also things you want to think about. If you look more at your complex carbohydrates, it's going to take them longer to turn into sugar, and it's probably going to be a lower glycemic index type of food as well. Your refined grains, things like your Frosted Flakes and Honey Smacks and all those other good cereals that everybody likes out there, many times are going to turn into sugar very quickly. And then a lot of times people will say, well, if I add it with milk, it's a protein, it's not going to turn as quickly. That is probably true, but milk has a lot of sugar too. So you just have to look at what's your goal. If your goal is to get a big sugar rush, then eat your bowl of cereal, because it's going to definitely do that. Hidden sugars. Where do you find sugars that you didn't think sugar should be? Or you never thought sugars would be there? Anybody find them at a usual place? How about salad dressing? Anybody looked at salad dressing?
Bread.
Bread. Amazing how much sugar. Milk always surprises me too. What else? Anything else you've looked at that one I can't believe they have any sugar? The one I always get asked is carrots. Because carrots have like 4 to 5 grams of sugar. But they're a complex carb. So if you're eating Snickers and Skittles, and then you're eating carrots, well, yeah, you're going to get too much sugar. But if you get rid of the junk, which is so hard to do, I know, and know it's hard. You get rid of the junk, then your sugar's good because it's coming from carrots, you know. So you want some carbs that have good sugars, you know that. But it's funny, we'll look at the carrots and we'll go, they have 5 grams of sugar, but then we look at the Skittles and go, they have 45, you know, or whatever. It's what we're doing. Hidden sugar names. There are probably names on here you have no idea. The other day, somebody had something up at Harris, and they were going, you have to try these, you have to try these. And I don't always read the label. There's, you know, that's not me. And I was just kind of looking at it because I was trying to see what they were eating. And before I ate one, they had invert sugar, and I'm like, what is invert sugar? Invert sugar is a homemade type of our fructose corn syrup. So it's like sugar, it's table sugar, and cream of tartar. I was looking it up, and they were telling you how to make invert sugar. So it's kind of a more of a liquid, smooth sugar, kind of like your corn syrup that we're trying to get everybody off of. And so it's better because it doesn't have the corn syrup. At least it just has table sugar, which we know what table sugar does. We don't always know what all the other stuff does. So, but you see things like raw sugar, honey. You see a lot of honey, confectioner's sugar. Of course, corn syrup, you know, cane syrup. They're all sugars, but some of them better for us than others. Okay, so lots of sugar names. Where's sugar found? Most people think it's found in candy. Candy is actually the little brown one over here. As we enter into Halloween, I guess I just gave you permission to eat lots of candy, right? Because there's not as much sugar in it. But really, where our sugar is in our drinks, our sodas, our energy drinks, all right? A lot of them in our coffees, all right? When we order our coffees and we look at all the different ways that we can order our caffeine, it's there too. These are bread, tea, if you like tea, sugars and honeys. Ready-to-eat cereals are less than 4%, okay? Candy, bigger dairy desserts, fruit drinks, and then grain-based desserts. So if you really had to look at the two that are the biggest, it'd be what we drink and related to our grains, because depending upon our grains, they're going to get turned into sugar, especially if they're refined. So, complex carbs, we need about 45 to 65% of our total calories per day. We know that the refined tends to be ones that we've processed more. They're going to be lower in nutrients than the unrefined. They're going to be better for us. It's going to take a little bit longer for them to break down. They're going to help us with our digestion, help us with our bloodstream, and make sure that glucose level stays up. If anybody has had that happen to them, that happens to a lot of my Senior 1 students. They have a big old sugar rush in the morning when they drink their energy drink or whatever it is they drink in the morning, and by 10 o'clock they're looking at me like, Miss Ennis, I gotta go get something to drink. And I'm like, yeah, you do need to go get something because your blood sugar just went down. Complex carbohydrates, your starches, grains, your wheat, rye, and rice, oats and barley, legumes, dried beans, peas, potatoes, yams. Anybody like sweet potatoes in here? They're one of the best complex carbs that are out there. They bring up our blood sugar, but then they stabilize us for a while and they fill you up. So they're awesome. White potatoes, not as good. They turn to sugar quicker. But again, portions is always what we want to look at. Fruits, vegetables, and grains, looking at our dietary fiber as well. Cellulose and fructose, some of the types of food sources where our carbs come from to give us that sugar. Glucose, our carrots, corn, dates, really popular. Lots of people like dates now in their granola mixes, and you see them in other types of things. Grapes, oranges give us a lot of energy too. Lactose, obviously your milk primarily. Your starch products, which just because they're starches doesn't mean they're bad. Just limiting barley, your peas, carrots. I don't know why it says peas again. Corn and oats, potatoes and pasta, rye and wheat are going to be some of your better carbohydrate food choices that you can make as well. Sucrose, things like your fruits, honeydew, cantaloupe have a lot of sugar in them, but that's okay. They taste good and they have good nutrients for us. So all of that is a good thing as well. I think sometimes it amazes people how much sugar some of our vegetables have. You know, green beans don't have any, but peas and corn do. They're more of a starchy substance, but a lot of people like this. So, you know, that's not all bad either. Just limiting, again, what and how you eat it. All right. So we talk about increasing nutrition and all the things that we want to do. And what normally or can happen is people go on this splurge and they're like, I'm going to eat healthy. And they start eating healthy and all of a sudden they're consuming more fiber than they've had like in a year, you know. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm not feeling so good, you know. And so I think it's really important when you start thinking about adding some of these things. Maybe you're trying to add some squash and you're trying to add sweet potatoes and you're trying to eat some carrots and celery and your body's like, whoa, I'm just going from like ding-dongs and ho-hos to, you know. And it's really important you think about there are some foods that are more gas-producing and you have to kind of listen to your body and add them slowly so that you aren't miserable and you kind of shift. So apples, cherries, coconuts, some of the nuts, some of the figs, you know, there's a reason that they tell you you only need to eat so many nuts. You eat a whole package of nuts, you know, or eat a whole big, you know, pound bag of almonds. Not only are you not going to feel so good, you're probably, you know, your GI tract's going to tell you that you don't need to be sitting in the classroom. Artichokes, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, celery, eggplant, all really good sources. Just watch the amounts you consume. People forget milk and honey. It has to break, your body has to break that sugar down. In order to do that, some people do that more eloquently than others, all right? And so you have to watch that. Bran, I always hear people say, I just got this cereal that's 100% bran, so like 6-7 grams of fiber in it, and I'm eating 3 bowls a day. And all of a sudden they're like, and I'm in the bathroom all the time, you know. So if you're trying to get rid of fat, that's going to push it through, but it push through everything else. Molasses, onions, radishes, soybean, wheat, barley, yeast, and of course beans, small amounts as well. Anybody heard about FODMAP? Seen it anywhere? It's actually not really even a diet, it's more of a lifestyle. One of the things that we started finding is, like I said, people are having more digestive issues. You see a lot more commercials for IBS. Irritable bowel syndrome. With the C, it's constipation. With the D, it's diarrhea. All right. So that means you have a neurogenic colon that just spasms. Sometimes people have a neurogenic bladder as well. You see a lot more commercials about how to go. All right. Those two conditions in itself do not put you more at risk for cancer. That's different than Crohn's, inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, some of those that we've heard about a lot. A lot of these can be controlled with diet. It's what we put in, being aware of our food. So I want you to be aware that some people out there are not going to be able to absorb some of these foods as well. And they're going to produce gas, it's going to produce bloating for them, diarrhea, constipation, some of those kinds of things. So the thought process there is that if we can feed the better bacteria in our body, okay, get rid of the bad bacteria, which is from a lot of the refined processed foods, we can hopefully eliminate some of these symptoms that people have, okay? There's another one out there called functional GI disorder. You're going to hear people talk about that as well. So FODMAP just means it's fermentable, and then it looks at your sugars, your oligosaccharides, your disaccharides, and your monosaccharides. And then it adds in a group of sweeteners as well. It is sweeteners that end with OL. So mannitol, sorbitol, xylitol, some of those. So we teach people then that if they're having trouble with these symptoms, irregularity, if they will look at which of these they're inserting, there's actually a low FODMAP diet and a high FODMAP diet, and it will tell you which ones are more prone to cause you problems. Most of the time, they're going to be the ones that have more sugar. They're going to be harder for you to break down. It's going to take more time for you to break down. Does that mean you could never eat them? Absolutely not. But you sure don't want to eat 3 high FODMAPs the day that you have to take an exam, right? If you know that's going to be a trigger for you and make you uncomfortable, painful, all right? So being aware of that and how your body digests and breaks those down is going to be another good thing for you to know. Fiber is a really good thing, but again, like everything else, too much of it, not always, all right? So people go from not eating any fiber to eating fibers. And this is going to happen to you in the hospital. They're going to talk to you. You're going to be talking to them about, well, have you thought about increasing your fiber? And then you ask them what they eat, and you give them some good examples, and you look at that. All right. So they may say, well, you know, I take FiberCon, or I'm going to start taking FiberCon, or whatever, and that's okay. But you want to be really careful that you don't add too much fiber, and you have to look at the types of fiber you add. The soluble fiber is the fiber that's broken down. So it actually kind of helps to delay glucose absorption. We tell people to eat some fiber because it's going to, you know, kind of help to move that glucose where it needs to be. It's going to kind of make you feel full. It's going to keep those nutrients in your body a little bit, but then it's going to also move them through. The insoluble fiber is fiber that's not broken down, and so it's our refuge. It's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to help us to, you know, have regular bowel movements and those kinds of things that we want to have. But you want to be really careful that you don't have them add too much at a time, because then they're going to be really uncomfortable as well. So the type of fiber and you know, how much is going to be a big deal for them as well. Always, if we can do it through foods, that's always going to be the better source. Vitamins, again, another thing that we really want to try to balance. We hear a lot about antioxidants. We really learn about foods that are kind of more superfoods that are going to help to increase our immune system so we can fight a lot of these diseases that are out there. If you are a cancer patient, you're going to meet with a nutritionist who's going to work with you to help you to build up your immune system so that those cells hopefully don't have as great a chance. We know in the past we've seen a lot of deficiencies. That's what we really focused on, our research, our time. Today we're focusing more on excess. You know, we see people taking vitamins. They have no idea what they're taking. They're just taking them because they think they need to. You know, there's vitamins today that are geared for people that are older, people that are younger, people that are teens, people that are, you know, gender specific. So there's a lot of different ones out there as well. Water soluble, fat soluble. The water soluble also is going to be directly absorbed. The fat soluble is going to need some protein for it to do that. But again, we don't want to store more vitamins than we need in our body. And so it's going to be really important. We don't want to tax our liver more than we have to. So we want to be careful that we don't store as many of those. So then being aware of what some of your water soluble vitamin sources are, and those are going to be a lot of your citrus fruits. Your tomatoes, broccoli, cabbage. Again, if you have trouble with, you know, GI distress, the cabbage may not be as popular. The B1s, pork and nuts, the legumes, whole grain cereals, and then the B2 vitamin, which is another water soluble. It's going to be things like your grains, your fish, your lean meats, and milk in smaller amounts. The B3 or the niacin is going to include a lot of them, and what's really kind of nice is when you look at some of these, they overlap, so they're going to get multiple different vitamins from some of these food sources. Your peanuts, your beans, your fish, your poultry, and your meats are going to give you some more of those too. Your B6, the yeast, corn, meat, poultry, and fish. B12, meat and liver. A lot of times you hear people say that they have a B12 deficiency sometimes, and so they are told to increase some of their organ meats, but you also know they have a lot of fat with them, so you have to be really careful with that. So they may also get B12 injections. Sometimes you'll hear people say that they need that. Folic acid, green leafy vegetables, liver, beef, fish, legumes, grapefruit, and oranges also have more of that citric type of fruits too available. Fat soluble is going to be more like your milks, your proteins, your liver and egg yolk, your green or orange vegetables. Your vitamin D is going to be fish oils. You've probably seen that with some of your omega oils. Some of your cereals, you'll see they say fortified with vitamin D, and milk that's fortified as well. Your vitamin E is going to come from some of the similar things, some of your oils, some of your leafy vegetables, and then cereals, apricot, apples, and peaches. Your vitamin K is going to help with your clotting, your green vegetables, your cauliflower, and your cabbage. So a lot of your foods are going to have some different benefits here that are going to reach a lot of those different ones. So a client is recovering from abdominal surgery, and she has a large abdominal wound. The nurse encourages the client to eat which food item that is naturally high in vitamin C to promote wound healing. Your choices are milk, oranges, bananas, and chicken. Okay, so let's go back and let's look, sorry, at what we were talking about. All right? So where would you go? Milk, oranges, bananas, and chicken. What? Yeah, and why do you say oranges? Because you know they're high in vitamin C. Okay, are there any of those others that are also high in vitamin C? Is chicken high in vitamin C?
No.
Milk has a little bit. Bananas may have a little bit, but we know that the really citrusy foods like oranges are going to have more. Okay, good. Another one, the nurse should instruct the client to eliminate or to eat which of the following foods to obtain the best supply of vitamin B12. Okay, so if we go back and look, meat and liver were really the two we talked about, organ meats, okay? So now where are we at? Meats and dairy products, broccoli and Brussels sprouts, green leafy vegetables, or whole grains? Meat and dairy products, right? So good sources of vitamin B12 include meat and dairy products. Whole grains are another good source. Green leafy vegetables are a good source of niacin, folate, and all of the other things. And the broccoli and Brussels sprouts are a good source of vitamin C. All right? So if you think about your oranges, your green leafy vegetables for vitamin C, and then some of those others, it's going to help you for the vitamin B12 as well. So start to think about that as you think about the different types of food sources for the different types of vitamins. Which foods would be better, all right? So that if you got that question, you would know how to answer that. When we talk then about minerals, we know we need smaller amounts, but they're still very important, especially for our body tissues and functions. We know we have 17 essential minerals. Anemia and osteoporosis, some of the two bigger ones that we do. A lot of times we have to add some minerals as people age to help with the osteoporosis as well. But we also know anemia can play a role, especially if you are doing a panel of your blood and you're looking at your blood count. So when we look at mineral sources, calcium, broccoli, carrots, and cheese, collard greens, green beans, and spinach. Spinach used to not be as popular. Now we see spinach lots of places, even at Subway. Milk and low-fat yogurt, rhubarb, tofu. If you love your tofu, then your minerals for calcium are good. Magnesium, another one that we don't even think about, but magnesium is very important in the way that it comes very easily in raisins, tuna, cauliflower, and peas. It does come in some of the oats if you actually add those. The green leafy vegetables, you just keep hearing about those, fruits and vegetables kind of everywhere. And avocado gives us more magnesium, so if you like guac, you're good. Slice a little avocado on your sandwich. Milk and low-fat yogurt, pork, beef, and chicken. And peanut butter does give us magnesium. Some mixed controversy out there about peanut butter, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Phosphorus, fish, nuts, organ meats, pork, beef, and chicken, and whole grain breads and cereals. Chloride really comes mostly from our salt. A lot of us like to use sea salt today because we see that out there. That also has a little bit, but we're noticing that as our salt changes, our chloride needs are changing too a little bit as well. But be careful of that because most everything we put in our mouth, unless we don't, we grew it or we know where it came from, is probably going to have some type of sodium chloride as well. Potassium, avocados and potatoes. Potatoes have a lot of potassium in it. They're good for that. And then again, going back to your fruits, your strawberries, your bananas, and your oranges. Cantaloupe, raisins, fish, mushrooms. If you like mushrooms, pork, beef, and veal. And then some of your spinach, carrots, and tomatoes also have a higher level of potassium. We say that you should limit your sodium to no more than 2,300 milligrams per day, which is about a teaspoon per day. And if you look at salt, everybody's thinking, oh my gosh. If you look at, like if you, well, this is a thick crusted pepperoni pizza, 2 slices. Would have about that much in it. If you are one of those people that likes microwave popcorn, you're probably looking at about that much for a half a bag. Have you heard the new stuff about microwave popcorn? Coming out about the chemicals that are being released when that bag is inflating, why it's not good to eat it. I know, they ruin everything, don't they? Chicken noodle soup, Frozen meals, okay? Lots of salt. A lot of people start up with Jenny Craig, some of the weight loss programs, which, the goal right there is to get the weight off. But they also notice then that they have a lot more trouble with swelling and their blood pressure and those kinds of things. A lot of that has to do with how they're packaged. So we know that anytime you have any of those packaged foods, you're going to have more sodium. American and cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is very, very high in sodium. Bacon and butter. Canned foods, obviously cured pork, meat, lunch, and hot dogs. Milk and white whole grain bread. If you look at your bread that you eat and see how much grains and how much salt is there. Ketchup and mustard, hidden for not only salt but also sugar. Processed and snack foods. Soy sauce, tons and tons of salt, and then obviously we know our table salt is going to have a lot as well. So the nurse is instructing a client with hypertension on the importance of choosing foods low in sodium. The nurse should teach the client to limit which of the following foods. I know you're all going to say apples, right? Apples, bananas, smoked sausage, or steamed vegetables. Probably the smoked sausage, okay. So that's going to be the issue for her. The other three are pretty good choices unless you just add a lot of salt to your steamed vegetables. Iron, the bread and cereals, dark green vegetables, your egg yolk, liver, and meat. Obviously, those are going to all be helpful if you're anemic or have a tendency to be that way. Zinc, leafy vegetables, eggs, and then your protein-rich foods. So see, if you're eating more of a well-balanced diet, you're trying to include a lot of these kinds of foods, looking at simple, complex carbohydrates, looking at some of your protein-rich foods, you're going to have a lot of these things met. I'm not saying you're going to need everything, and you're still not going to need a multivitamin, because we know you probably are, but you're still going to at least meet some of these food sources. So the nurse is teaching a client who has iron deficiency anemia about foods she should include in her diet. The nurse determines that the client understands the dietary modifications if she selects which of the following from her menu. So which one is going to give her more iron? Oranges and dark green leafy vegetables. All right. Nuts and milk, probably not as good a choice. Coffee and tea, probably not a good choice for minerals anytime. Cooked rolled oats, and it's going to be D, oranges and dark green leafy vegetables. And they're also a good source of vitamin C, which many times is going to help us absorb the iron that we take in. Okay, so make sure you star that, write that down, however you need to remember that. But it's not only looking for what's a good source of iron, but also what's going to help us to absorb the iron that we take in. And sometimes that's the problem. We don't have what we need to transport the minerals and vitamins that we take in. So, questions on that? All right. So, we've talked a lot about all the different foods. I'm sure most of you did not come here today wanting to know, what do I need to eat? You know what to eat. So now we have to figure out, how do we do this? How do we make this work? And that's where you come in, because you're going to be the one that's helping your patient and probably your families figure out how to do that. So we want to reduce processed foods. We want to make sure that we look for reducing foods that we know have trans fats or anything that's synthetic in them. Solid fats and added sugars, we want to make sure that we're aware of what does the label tell us. Alcohol, reducing the amount of alcohol. You notice I didn't say eliminate. And reducing the amount of daily sodium that we take, which is going to be done very easily if we reduce the amount of processed foods. Increase fruits and vegetables, increase our whole grains. Look for fat-free and low-fat milk and milk products, protein foods. Replace solid fats with oils. Okay? We know we have to have some oils. Foods with potassium, fiber, calcium, and vitamin D. For pregnant women, we're very concerned about folic acid. We know it not only helps to prevent birth defects in babies by preventing the spina bifida, the opening in the spinal column. We also know that it has wonderful effects against some cancers and also heart disease. So folic acid is huge. It's a big one for everyone, not just for pregnancy. Vitamin B12 for adults age 15 and older. Sometimes they need a vitamin B12 shot. That's the issue that we have to look at. So being aware of what are your vitamins, what are your nutrients in your body, telling us how much do you have or not have. Clean eating. Anybody heard that? What's that mean? We need to wash our food down instead of before? What does clean eating mean? means we want to really get rid of or eliminate or reduce the amount of caffeine we take in. Jen, you still have your Starbucks? Absolutely. I don't really want to be around you if you don't have your Starbucks, right? Your Starbucks is a choice you make. It's okay. That's all right. Refined sugar. Can you still have sugar? Absolutely. Think about the sugar that you take in. Think about the amount of alcohol that you take in, the type of alcohol you take in, and then the processed foods that you eat. So that the processed foods, if you choose to eat them, you're eating a smaller amount than you were before. You also want to think about your digestive function. If a food doesn't agree with you, there's probably a reason for that. All right? Eat to maintain your blood sugar. You sure don't want your blood sugar to bottom out in the middle of clinical. Believe me, that happens to my students. Or during a test. So it's really important that you stay up. You're finding that you need to have your energy for a long time. I always tell my senior 1 students that those peanut butter crackers they sell in the store that are like $2 or $3, they're not very expensive. They're in those little packages, even though they do have fat in them, and they're peanut butter. And they're like, Miss Dennis, you told us not to eat peanuts. They're really good when you're on the floor and you haven't eaten for a while and your blood sugar's going down. So think about carrying something in your pocket because you may not get that break when you want to. Or you may as a student, but not as a real nurse. And yes, you're going to be a real nurse. Follow an individual plan to meet your goals, all right? Diet's okay, lifestyle's better. We've all heard about it, you know. Take small steps. Start to think about what can I do? If I don't eat good, what can I do to begin the whole process, you know? One of the things that I started to really look at for my family was what were we buying? You know, what was really in the pantry? And I started realizing we had more in the pantry than more in the refrigerator, and that's kind of where I began. I have a book called Practical Paleo. I am in no way a guru of endorsing paleo for everybody because I think that there's all kinds of diets out there. Clean eating goes a long way. The reason that I like her book is she's a nutritionist, first of all. She's very passionate about paleo, and that's, like I said, not what I endorse. What I do like, though, is she likes nutrition and she knows nutrition. And she's probably taught me more in the last 2 years about how your body works and the type of fuel we need to give it than I've ever learned. And I've been in many nutrition courses, and I've been a nurse a long time. So when you think about someone that understands the food that we eat and how it works, that's very helpful. And I will show you at the end today, I have some web links just to some handouts that you can print out for your family and look at, or for yourself if you want to. But diet versus lifestyle, you know, it's going to stick a lot longer if you think about how it's going to affect you. We know that we have the choosemyplate.gov, which is very good for us because it helps us look at all the different foods that we put in our bodies. Our fruits and our grains, our vegetables and our protein, always making sure our protein source is the smallest. And then also, if we choose to include dairy, dairy can be a lot of different things. It doesn't always have to be milk. And then if we do include dairy, what type of dairy? You know, are we going to use soy milk, almond milk, cashew milk? There's all kinds of things. So it doesn't always have to be what we were raised with or what we know about. What we do know is the Clean Your Plate Club, if anybody was raised in a Clean Your Plate Club, is not a good way to teach kids to eat. It's not a good way for us to eat. I remember when I was growing up, my mom would say, there's starving children in Africa, you need to eat. And as I got older, I finally said, Mom, it doesn't really matter if I clean my plate or not. The children in Africa are still going to be starving, all right? And so it wasn't that I wasn't sensitive to that, but it's looking at waste, and I get that. If you look at the portions that we get when we go to somewhere to eat. Some of us, some of you may say, I'm just going to eat half of it, or some of you may take the rest home, and some of you may eat the whole thing, whatever. All right? You have to make that choice and do that. But we do know that we don't really always have to eat everything that's given to us. It's not rude to say, I'm done. It's just harder, right? So we have to find out what is going to work for us. We also have to remember that nothing is good without activity. All right? We used to say, if you just go to Weight Watchers and you eat your meals you're supposed to and you're going to lose weight. Well, that's absolutely right. But now we say you got to also exercise. So we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. You spent a lot of time figuring out what was the difference between active and exercise. and then tracking and planning. And don't you find that to be the key? I find that if I have the celery in the refrigerator but it's not cut up, it's not near as fun to eat. All right? Now, celery really isn't that much fun to eat, no matter what, right? But it's definitely a lot easier if I have it readily available to me. I don't know about all of you, but if I'm hungry when I go home, I can consume 300 to 500 calories in not very long, and I'm not even through the kitchen. All right? Haven't even put my backpack down, right? So if we think about, oh my gosh, when I get inside, that's the time I'm the hungriest. Let's back up and think about 2 hours before, what do you need to eat so you're not going to kill someone because you're so hungry? Does that happen to you? Ever? By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, aren't you all just ravenous? You're just like, I'll just eat anything or anywhere, okay? And so your blood sugar is telling you, I need to eat. It's giving you the right message. You just got to figure out what to feed it, all right? So planning, recording what you eat, keeping track of what you eat, it always looks worse when we write it down than it does in what's in our head. So what do food labels really tell us? All right, so I'm going to pass out some things. They may be things you've seen, and they may be things you never want to see. All right? Anybody tried almond butter?
I heard it's
You heard it's what?
expensive.
It is very expensive.
I heard it's worth it though.
It's very good.
What do you got to say about peanut butter? Because I'm going to take offense to that.
I'm not going to say anything bad about peanut butter. It just doesn't count as a nut. It's not a healthy nut.
Yeah, what were you going to say before that?
What was I going to say before that? That it's just tied. I mean, let's think about it. Something tied to one of the biggest allergies in the world. What does that tell you about it? Okay, so it does create a lot of inflammation. I love peanut butter. And so I think you just got to think about this. If it works for you, good. That's fine. Just be aware that there might be a better choice if you're going to do that. But on the other hand, it's a great protein source. Okay? And if you choose peanut butter, choose the kind that you have to stir instead of the kind that has the partially hydrogenated oil in it.
Yes.
There's a reason it stays as that little clump in the store. So if you get the natural kind that you stir up, then at least you're just getting peanuts and you're not getting trans fat too. So, just a suggestion. My son's like, really? Do we have to stir peanut butter, Mom? Whatever. It's your life. Okay. All right. Food descriptors. These are ones you've seen in the past. Fat-free means that you can have less than a half gram of fat, just like the trans fat. Reduced fat, 25% less per serving. So the biggest one I think about with that is potato chips. Because you see them and you're like, yay, they say reduced fat, I can have the whole bag now, okay? Low fat, less than 3 grams of fat per serving. Lean, extra lean. Meat, okay? You go and look for your hamburger. And if you look for the extra lean, it's going to be about $7 per pound. And it's going to be less than 5 grams of fat, all right? So you have to decide, is it worth it for me to buy extra lean hamburger? Or should I buy lean hamburger and wash it off so I get some of the fat off? Or am I going to get half turkey and half fat? Or do I really care and I'm going to get the 85% real McCoy and have a great old juicy hamburger, okay? It makes no difference to me. I just want you to be educated so you can make the choice. If you want to get drier hamburger, the extra lean is going to be kind of the top of the line for that. Lean, extra lean, light. Again, they're going to use these descriptors to their benefit, right? So if it says light, a lot of times you see that on sour cream. You might have lost a couple grams of fat, all right? No calories, calorie-free, all right? They've added something to it so that it still tastes sweet. Nobody's going to buy it if it's no calories and it doesn't taste good, all right? Low calories, a third of the calories, that's not a bad option. Sugar-free means that they don't have any sugar over half a gram, so they can still have a little bit of sugar. Reduced sugar, at least 25% less sugar. Many times they use reduced sugar instead of sugar-free because it sounds more healthy. Okay? I'm getting less sugar. That sounds good. Low sodium, no salt or salt-free, high fiber, 5 grams or more. You want to look at whether it's soluble or insoluble fiber. And then a good source of fiber. They use this one a lot. Because anything that says good source, you should buy, right? So if they're telling you that the M&Ms have a good source of fiber, we should get them, right? Okay. And then there's new ones. We're not going to get into all these today. We're actually going to do that in a few weeks. We're going to talk more about new labels. But you see labels. I mean, has anybody tried to buy eggs lately? You stand there for 10 minutes. There's everything from a happy egg to a not so happy egg, right? Pasture raised, cage-free, organic. And then instead of organic, they have natural. Like natural wouldn't be organic, right? Free-range roaming. What does this mean? They roamed all over the world? What happened to them? Naturally raised. Because natural isn't good enough. Now we got naturally raised. But are naturally raised free-range and roaming? No added hormones. Well, I would hope not. Vegetarian fed. What did they do? Give them green leafy vegetables? I just can't believe these chickens ate tossed salad, all right? So there's all these labels that are now coming forward that we're seeing. And I'm going to bring in all the different eggs. We're going to talk about them and go through that. No nitrates. No nitrates. Anybody have that lunch meat that has a package that says no nitrates? Uncured. Okay, we're finding that there's carcinogens that are being released when we add nitrates and do those kinds of things. So you will see if you go to the deli counter, people asking now for uncured ham. There is uncured over, in that little package that you can buy. Uncured bacon. There's all kinds of different things that you can start to buy. You're still going to have some salt, but they either have limited or the process has been a little bit different to reduce the amount of chemicals that have been added and the amount of nitrates that have been added and that were in the part of that curing process for the meat, which we know has some cancer issues as well. Okay. Then other people are going to say everything causes cancer. Well, that's probably true too. So you just have to figure out how educated you want to be and pick your time. My goal is for you to get through nursing school, not spend your time in the grocery store. All right. But I want you to also be informed consumers. So this is stuff that's coming on. People are going to ask you about this. So just know that this stuff is out there. Labeling, unbelievable. Organic is everywhere, okay? Is organic the same at Walmart? Is the same at Kroger? Is the same at Whole Foods? I don't know if it's the same, but I know I'm going to spend a lot less at Walmart than I'm at Whole Foods, okay? So you have to decide, again, what is your goal? You can get 100% organic, all right? You can get organic, which is 95%. It's going to cost you a little less, but you're still going to get a better product, I think. You can get made with organic ingredients. That's about 70%, all right? And you can get natural, but natural is different than organic, all right? Now, here's something you may not have thought about. Organic does not mean they didn't use any pesticides. Whoa, I just paid $5 for this loaf of bread, and you're telling me, okay, let's think about our world. If you decided you were going to go on your block and you're going to have an organic garden, okay, and you're like, we are going organic. I'm tilling up the lawn. We're putting in a garden. All right, that's awesome. What happened before you were there? Do you think chemicals were probably sprayed? Probably. It's really, really hard in today's world to not have any chemical anywhere on the ground, okay? But you're like, we're treating the ground, we're going from the ground up, we're going to plant our own garden. I know people have done this. We're going to plant our own garden, and we're going to call it organic because we're not going to put any of that stuff on it. Great. Are there going to be a few things probably in the soil? Yeah. But is it going to be better than probably what you would have bought if you had all the other chemicals that were sprayed on it? Probably. All right? Good luck. That is not going to be for me. I'm not growing my own garden. Sorry, I'm not there yet. All right? But I appreciate that, and I respect you for doing that. But please don't think that you're probably going to be 100% free of chemicals. But you're going to be so much better than you would have been, okay? There are some less invasive chemicals that they can use with organic gardening that are more approved. And there's a website you can go to look at all of that and see that. But anyway, they show you what are more of the organic chemicals that you can use. And so if you buy organic, you're safe to assume that you're probably going to get less chemicals than if you didn't get organic. And you're going to get a fruit or a vegetable or a potato or whatever you choose that was cared for differently than the normal run-of-the-mill. Okay, so in that sense, it's good. But please don't think that because you choose 100% organic and pay the $5 for the small little thing of strawberries, all right, and we're going to talk about the dirty stuff or all the different ones that are out there. You may still have some chemicals that were put on, but just not going to be as bad as the others, okay? So just know that, and know that natural and organic are not the same. If it is non-organic, you're like, okay, Ms. Tennis, that sounds great, but I only have so much money and I only have so much time. I get it, because I do not like to be in the grocery store, okay? So if you have to make choices, you're like, well, what could I do tomorrow that's not going to make me, have to sell my firstborn and mortgage my house, so that I can at least be smart about this. If you're going to choose non-organic, be more selective in which you choose. So if you're going to choose produce that's non-organic, think more about a thick layer of skin that could be peeled off. So a banana, I don't know many people that eat the banana peel, all right? So if you don't eat the banana peel, then if you choose non-organic, most of the stuff that you don't want to have went on that peel. So get rid of that peel. Don't feed it to the dog. Pineapple, kiwi, melon, avocados. So you're sitting there, and the organic avocados are $2 a piece, maybe $3, and the others are like 2 for $1. Get the non-organic. You're not going to eat the avocado peel, okay? Citrus fruit, good. Organic, thin skin, ones that you're not going to probably peel off. Apples, if you're going to peel the skin, you maybe, but it's a thinner skin, so the chemicals are going to get through easier. Berries, real hard to peel. Strawberries, sorry, can't do it. Blackberries, hard to do. Stone fruits, peaches, nectarines, plums, cherries, bell peppers, leafy greens. Those are going to be more of the things I think about for organic, all right? So kind of use that as a guide so you don't go overboard here and think I'm telling you that in order to pass the class you have to buy all organic. It's not what I'm saying. We still want you to pay your tuition, okay? Unless you're not coming back. So you got to be smart about it. And the rule of thumb is really the thicker the layer, the less exposure. Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. All right? This is from a website called fullyraw.com. And it just tells you the Dirty Dozen: apples, celery, tomatoes, cucumbers, grapes, nectarines, peaches, potatoes, spinach, strawberries, blueberries, sweet bell peppers, green beans, and kale. They're kind of out there. We're still trying to decide about them. It just kind of depends on how they were processed. Okay? So those are more dirtier fruits and vegetables that we probably would want to choose organic if we could. Clean 15. Onions, avocado. Okay, you're going to say, well, you just told me avocados, yes. They're just saying that if you can choose an organic, that would be great. But again, remember, organic, you're going to take the peel off. Okay, this isn't an ideal world. We don't live in an ideal world. Sweet corn, watch for GMO. We take corn and we make it into lots of different things. It's probably Legos somewhere. Pineapple, mango, sweet peas, eggplant, cauliflower, asparagus, kiwi, cabbage, watermelon, grapefruit, sweet potatoes, honeydew melon. Okay, so those are all the things that you're probably not going to get as many of the chemicals if you choose not to do organic. Questions on that? Environmental Working Group is a group that actually studies all this. How would you like that job? So I gave you their website. All right, so you're looking at food labels, and you're looking at all the different ones you see. So what do you see out there? What are some of the labels that you see on some of the food items I gave you? Uncured, we talked about. What else? Do you see good source? Do you see 100% organic? There's a yogurt out there. What's it say? Where's that big yogurt? Who has it? There, that's one. And that one's 0% fat. And it is, does it say it's a good source of anything, or? It's a strain. Okay, there you go. That one, right there. Hold up that yogurt. That's a Greek yogurt. What's it say?
Whole milk, yogurt, whey, 19 grams of protein, authentic strain.
Authentic strain. Does it say grass-fed? Someone? I think it is from grass-fed cows.
That's what I say.
Yeah. We now even go and look at our cows and how they're fed. So for yogurt too. So it shows you that as well. Somebody else have the raisin stuff, the granola or raisin cereal? Somewhere around. I think it shows you how much fiber's in there. So there's lots of different labels that are out there. Now look at one of your labels that I gave you and see how much a serving is. Too bad I don't have ice cream here. How much is a serving of ice cream? A half a cup. Would you stand up if you need a half a cup of ice cream, please? Because I want to know how you do that. Okay. A half a cup of ice cream. Has anybody measured a half a cup out? You can't even find it in the bowl. All right? Don't most of you like get the spoon and just sit down on the couch and eat the Ben & Jerry's? Like the commercial? Right? All right. So what I want you to understand is that it's not how much you intended to eat, it's how much you ate. Okay? And unfortunately, people don't get that. So if they ate the whole jar of Ben & Jerry's, it's not half a cup anymore. All right? They have to do math and figure it out. All right? So what you have to decide is it worth consuming this entire item? And most of you are going, yes, it is. Have you ever eaten the whole thing of Ben & Jerry's? It's the best feeling in the world, okay? You have to decide, and your consumers have to decide, is it worth it? All right? Half a candy bar, hard to do, but probably what we should do. Eat half a candy bar, okay? Eat one of the little fun-size ones, or eat 15 of the little fun-size ones, but it doesn't feel like you ate one, right? So decide, is it worth consuming? What nutritional value are you getting from it? For some of the things I put around over there, you've got the other things, the Skittles and the candy bars. I brought you the stuff that's also out there so you can see that. Some of that does have a lot of nutrition coming from it, all right? It also costs a lot. How will you compensate for it if you choose to eat the whole thing? Are you going to go to the gym more? Gym less? Do you need to worry about that? Okay? So starting to think about what we're going to eat, how much are we going to eat, and if we're going to indulge, is there anything we're going to do to compensate for it? Make comparisons. Our percent of daily value tell us how much of that vitamin or nutrient is in that product if we were to consume it based upon a 2,000 calorie diet. If you're eating 3,000 calories, if you're eating 1,000 calories, it's going to change that percent of daily value. So if it tells you it has 25% of vitamin D, that means that someone on a 2,000 calorie diet will get 25% of their nutrient from this food service. You also have to go back and look at how much do they need to get. If they don't need that much, is excess okay? Okay? It also helps you to look at what has the highest and what has, the lowest, and then what has the highest fiber and fat content as well. So that's important too. I am not worried about RDI, okay? If you're going to be a nutritionist, you're going to be more worried about recommended dietary, intake and all of that. I'm not real worried about that. Your book talks just a little bit about that. But I do want you to understand percent of daily value because it helps you to look at food products and what their key is. What's their claim to fame? Calories, obviously, that's where we all gear in on, is the calories there. And sometimes we're scared away because we see, oh my gosh, this yogurt has a lot of calories. Okay, well, maybe we just need to eat half of it if that's what we want. But the other thing you have to remember is maybe if you eat that yogurt or you eat the almonds, you're not going to be hungry later. And so that's going to take care of what you would have normally eaten. So remember that. Calories are recorded per serving, includes your fat calories. We say no more than 30% of your total calories should come from fat, no more than 10% saturated. That's kind of a general rule. I gave you more of a specific rule earlier. So if you have 2,000 calories per day, no more than 600 calories should come from fat. Most of you are going, oh, that's pretty generous. So if you don't have any heart healthy issues, that's going to be what we're kind of looking at. So for the exam, you will need to know calorie values, how many calories per gram, 4 calories per gram for carbohydrates and protein. Fats is 9, alcohol is 7. All right? So if you look at a food label, you can tell me what the serving size is, how many servings there are in this, okay? How many calories? It tells you the percent of daily value. So if you're going to consume 90 calories, 5% of that's going to be fat, 20% of that's going to be sodium, 80% of that's going to be vitamin A, 60% vitamin C. So it's going to have 2 key vitamins there that are going to be kind of important as well. It does have some sugars, just 3 grams. Has a little bit of fiber. Okay, not so bad on fiber. It does have a lot of salt. Okay. So know that, look at that. Could you answer these questions? What is the recommended serving size? I'll give you a couple of food labels, and I'll ask you to tell me what the serving size is. I'll ask you to tell me if it has a nutrient listed, like if it has 4 calories per gram, or it has 7, or it has 9. What is that normally going to be? Fats, protein, carbs. What percentage of total calories come from fat for this food item? Is this with the guidelines for heart healthy? So in order to do that, you're going to divide your calories from fat. If you're trying to figure out fat grams by total calories, you're going to multiply that by 100. So an example would be if you have a 300-calorie food and it has 60 calories from fat, how did I get 6 grams? How many calories per gram is there in fat?
Fat?
9. So you're going to have to take 9 times how many grams of fat there are per that serving, right? So if I tell you it's 2 servings, you're going to have to figure out how it is for 2 servings. So you're going to have to double that fat. So per serving, if you're only consuming 1 serving, remember we talked about recommended serving size, and then if it has 4 calories per gram, it's most likely which type. This one is fat, so it had 9. And then what percentage of total calories come from fat. So if you have a 300-calorie food item, and you're going to divide, and it has 60 calories from fat, you're going to divide the 60 by 300 and then multiply by 100 for your percentage. It's going to have 20% of its calories from fat. Let's do the crackers, okay? This is 2 crackers, 60 calories. So if the 60-calorie item has 1.5 grams of fat, you're only consuming 1 serving. How many people eat 2 crackers? Probably the same people that say they eat a half a cup of ice cream, right? Okay? Multiply 1.5 grams of fat by 9 calories per gram. It's going to give you 13.5 calories. Now you're going to divide the 13.5 calories, and why are you dividing that? Because this is 1. How many calories of fat, right, in the food product. So now you know it's 13.5 calories. You need to divide it by the total calories. It's going to tell you that you have about 22.5% of that product from fat. Okay? Making sense? No. You need to work. You need to be able to go through and do that. You'll have 2 questions like that on the exam. I gave you a couple of websites. The FDA does the food labeling nutrition information, and then there's an EHOW video that shows you how to read calories from food labels and figure out fat and other types of protein and that kind of stuff. I just want to remind you, I know you figured out BMI last time you were at the MAC. I know you were doing that, going to be doing that if you haven't already an assessment, looking at that. But for testing purposes, you will need to be able to calculate BMI. Not yours, I won't ask you to do that, but weight in pounds divided by height in inches squared times 703, or you can do it, the other way. You could do the times 703 divided by. We'll give you that. So an example would be if you weigh 150 pounds and you're 5 foot 5 inches, or you're 65 inches, your BMI calculation would be 150 divided by 65 squared, because that's your inches times the 703 is 24.96, okay? And a lot of times students are always like, well, do we round up? Well, that one kind of fell at a bad spot, and I will not ever give you one that's right on the line for testing. But underweight would be less than 18.5. Normal is 18.5 to 24.9, which is considered a healthy weight. Overweight, then we look at 25 to 29. So, like I said, for the rounding purposes, I would want you to round up, okay? And so I would not give you one that's in between. These values may be a little bit different than the ones you have in your assessment book versus in your Fahey book versus that. So make sure that you look at what Fahey says for BMI, because that's what you'll be tested on, is those categories. Yes?
Does that mean we bring our calculators for the test?
We'll furnish you calculators at the test. Yeah, and you'll need those for heart rate reserve and for maximal heart rate, as well as this, and as well as your fat labels. So I'm glad you're going over math, because you're going to need it, okay? So you'll have your calculators that we'll furnish for you, okay? If you have a nurse pack calculator and you want to bring it with you, that's not a problem, but it has to be that kind of school issue calculator. It can't be a fancy calculator. You can't bring in your one from whenever, your algebra or whatever, and obviously you can't use your phone. So, all right, so the values is important. You need to know values, so you do need to know those ranges. Waist measurement, another way that we can assess looking at risk. We also, when we do a waist measurement, we're going to do that by putting a measuring tape around, obviously, a waist, and we're going to need to do that while they're standing. Obviously, when we sit down, our belly changes a little bit, so, and it's going to need to be one that's accurate, so we don't want you to suck in, all right? It is a good indicator. It's a better indicator of abdominal fat, but still, the ones that are going to give us the best results are the ones that we can actually do. They're going to look at our body fat in our whole body and tell us where we're at. But it does give us a little bit of an indicator of risk for heart disease, type 2 diabetes. It tells us where we carry our fat and how that can play a role in our health as well. Risk increases if men are greater than or equal to 40, women are greater than or equal to 35. Never fair is it, ladies, but anyway, we have a little bit less there due. So know BMI, how to calculate, know the values, the ranges, so that if I gave you a range, you could tell me if that was okay or what you would counsel them to do. And then also think about waist measurement and the risk going up if they're over 40 or over 35 inches. Questions on that? All right. So food in your body. Eating whole foods. What does that mean? Eating whole foods. Eating whole foods. Yes. Okay. Eliminating the process. Eating foods that are sold as they were prepared. All right. When the corn comes off of the crop, and it doesn't look like corn when we buy it, that's probably not a whole food, right? So trying to get food as close to how they were grown and raised as possible is really important. Avoid modern, processed, and refined foods. That sounds really easy, doesn't it? You're not going to buy anything in a package. Okay? Guess what? Now you have to bake the package. All right? So you have to cut up the chicken. Excuse me. If you're going to do fresh green beans, you don't have to, but if you are, you're going to have to cut the green beans. Somebody did that for you, all right? You were paying for that convenience. So be careful that you don't set yourself up to fail from the beginning, because it does take planning, all right? And so if you're in the middle of nursing school and you're thinking, I'm going to try some of this with my family and just see how it works, don't try to do it all at once. You're going to drive yourself nuts and nobody's going to do anything, all right? Still buy the package of Oreos. That's okay, But maybe you do something else. Maybe you make some healthy muffins or something they can eat in the morning before they head out the door. Something simple and easy to do. Maybe you put something in the refrigerator that they can grab for before they grab for the Oreos, okay? So take it baby steps, one at a time. Eat to maintain proper digestive function. This is what I hear from people more than anything else, is I started doing this, and I kind of felt like I was a quack when I started it, all right? And then I started feeling better. And it's like, is it in my head? Who cares? If you're feeling better, you're feeling better, all right? Probably not in your head. So let your body tell you and help you. Eat to maintain proper blood sugar regulation. The insulin spikes get really high. I mean, they get really tired of that. Anybody seeing that going around right now about what happens to your body after you drink a Coke? What happens to your body after? Now they did pumpkin spice latte. I was so disappointed that they had to put that in there too now. So I'm just telling you that they're looking at what happens to our body after we consume some of these things. Well, we know there's a big sugar spike that happens, and then we kind of come on our way down. We feel really good on the way up, not so good on the way down. So maybe you start thinking about what are some proteins, what are some lower glycemic index foods that I can eat that are not going to cause that sugar spike as quickly. So that I'm going to have, be able to handle these 6-hour days that I'm doing lecture and all that. Longer than 6, isn't it? Follow a plan to reach your goals. Come up with what works for you. Definitely do not have to recreate everything in a few minutes. When you talk about other things such as healthy foods, you want to think about some of these. Add some nuts. We need fats. We need oils. Cook with a little bit of oil. We've been taught if you fry something, spray it with, a Pam or something like that. Well, you put a little bit of oil in there instead of the Pam. You need that oil. That oil is important for your body. Maybe mix it up with some meat and some veggies and fruits. Do some different things. Maybe slice up an avocado on your sandwich. Put it with something else. Eliminate refined foods. Those are the grains, the packaged snacks, the processed and pasteurized dairy products, some beverages, some sweeteners. Mix it up. Maybe just limit the amount that you have, as well. So think about that as well. How do you feel after you eat bread? If you feel okay, then maybe that's not something you want to give up. Maybe you just want to look for different types of bread. Maybe you want to try the sprouted grain bread. See if that's going to be a little bit easier for you to process. So we talked about the dirty dozen and the clean 15, and now we have the scary 7. The scary 7 are things that they tell you really should try to avoid. High fructose corn syrup. I'll just list them off for you. Trans fat, artificial flavors, MSG, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners, and preservatives. So high fructose corn syrup we've heard a lot about. There's arguments on both sides about whether it's as bad as they say it is, in replacing it. And the main thing there is they're really looking at is, first of all, the type of food you're putting in your body that's processed and it's been manufactured, it's been changed, the structure's been changed, but also the amount of sugar you're putting in your body. It's hard to compete with that. Trans fats, we've already talked about that, the different ways to look for them in your food products, the palm kernel oil, the partially hydrogenated. Artificial colors, okay, those are chemical additives. Those are ones that we know that there's been some changes in children, especially have to do with some of the behavioral disorders. So are those things that you want to continue to put on? But it's really a blanket statement, so there's a lot of different ones. MSG, things like headaches. Lots of people say that MSG causes you want to eat more. It's a chemical that is used sometimes to process our food. Artificial colors, okay? We've had some inattention and obsessive compulsive, some of those disorders that have said it just potentiates those conditions if you have the tendency there. So being careful of all the different dyes that are out there, the blue, the red. The artificial sweeteners, things like aspartame, sucralose, the ACE-K, which is the potassium one, the alpha-sulfamine, sulfame, potassium. Neotame, I'm not real familiar with neotame. That's one of those questionable ones. Saccharin, sweet and low, one of those that we're looking at. And then preservatives, things like VHT, VHA, nitrates, nitrites, sodium benzoate. It's caused some allergic reactions. It's also a carcinogen, so you'll see that that's also a preservative that we use a lot. You will find a lot of the more organic or natural foods have less preservatives added to them, which means that their shelf life is going to be less. Or if you buy a whole chicken and you prepare the chicken, instead of buying the packaged chicken, you're not going to have that. But again, that's a time factor as well, time and money. Sulfites. So those are some different ones that are part of that. So high fructose corn syrup, trans fats, artificial flavors, MSG, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners, and preservatives. Scary 7. Popular diet. I just wanted you to kind of know what's out there related to the best overall. U.S. News, World of News report, rates everything, and they rated diets for 2015. Best overall, they came up with the DASH diet, which is Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. You'll hear more about the DASH diet if you haven't already in Foundations when you talk about hospital diets. I don't go into all that in this course. I go more into personal and community nutrition. Therapeutic Lifestyle Changes, or TLC, has to do more with not only eating better, but also looking at your activity. So it was kind of a whole lifestyle approach to that. Mayo Clinic, Mediterranean diet. Those were the 4 diets that came up in the top when they looked at those. Other diets that were good, Healthy Solutions, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, Biggest Loser, Slim Fast, South Beach Zone, Paleo were some of the other diets that they reviewed, and they said they had mixed results. But the ones that they really looked at that had the best results, the best weight loss, and the best adherence were the ones that I've listed here. Now, that could be for a variety of factors. Some of those are physician-sponsored diets. The Mayo Clinic is really more of a physician-sponsored weight loss clinic, so you're going to have to come in and be checked, so a lot of that made a difference too. But I think it's important to know which are the ones that people are looking at. So let's talk about the amount we eat. We've talked a lot about what we eat. Now let's talk about the amount we eat. So I'm going to give you just a quick little clip from Super Size Me. Some of you may remember that video. It's about the guy that decided to eat McDonald's only for 30 days. If you own stock in McDonald's, I'm sorry. If you love McDonald's, I'm sorry.
Yeah, can I get the double quarter pounder with cheese meal? I think I'm going to have to go suicide.
It's hard for me to watch him go through this.
It feels like they're starting to get addicted to it now.
You saw his numbers, right? His numbers are accurate.
Maybe thought for me. You'll liver your blood.
You're going to die. You'll die. I want more. You're going to stop.
American way, get it back, get it broke, either way you're gonna pay. Suicide me. Suicide me. Suicide me. Suicide me. Suicide me.
An older video. Anybody remember seeing Super Size Me? What'd you think of it? Morgan Spurlock, the gentleman in the picture, for those of you that don't know, he went ahead and decided that for 30 days he was going to eat only McDonald's and he was going to supersize as much as he could. So when they asked him what size he wanted, he would always ask for a bigger amount. And of course you know how much they've done that. It's a little bit better than it used to be, but how much they do that. He was into about 2 weeks, and they already were seeing labs change. His blood chemistry was changing. But they had noticed a change, but they weren't concerned. After 3 weeks, they were basically telling him they were not going to be responsible for his health if he did not stop. He said, I was doing it for 30 days, and I'm doing it. His lab took a huge change. His cholesterol doubled. His liver enzymes and the amount of fat that he was storing was just significant. It was enough that his doctor was concerned, very concerned, whether they were going to be able to reverse the blood chemistry. They did. They've done follow-up interviews on him, and his lab has returned. But what it taught him is just amazing about how the more we are presented with options to get bigger sizes of everything that we do, the more we think that's okay. And we adjust. You know, we go to Chili's and they bring us an appetizer, and maybe it's the end of the week and you're like, oh, thank goodness I'm done. And you have a margarita, and then you decide to order an entree, and then they're like, hey, you want to get that cookie dessert? Everybody goes, sure, you know, and you're just miserable when you leave, right? But you don't do that every day, or I hope you don't do that every day, all right? And so that's one of the things he was trying to look at, is how much does our lifestyle play a role in how our health makes a difference. And that's been one of the landmark videos, one of the earlier videos many years ago now, but it was one of the first ones that came out, and kind of helps to see that. The other thing is that he noticed that his body started to crave the food. And if you haven't had that happen to you, go without fast food for a while and then start eating it again, and there's something that happens to you. You just starts tasting good again, doesn't it? And so that's one of the things that he noticed that was really prevalent as well. So it's a very good documentary of that and how all of that worked in his family. So how big do you think a large should be? Because, you know, what used to be our smalls are now our mediums, are now our larges. Okay, that's how that works. And, you know, when you go to the movies, you know, and you're like there and you're paying like way too much for stuff, you know, and they're like, for 50 cents more you can get a large drink, and you're like, why not? It's only 50 cents, you know. And so, you know, if you order it, you're going to drink it, right? You know, we haven't got to the clean plate drinks yet. It's just the clean plate plates, right? So you're going to drink it. So, you know, in our defense, you know, they're really not making it easy for us when they do that, you know, because they're like, they want you to get the large. So think about that, because one of the things you may not know is that we have went through severe portion distortion, not only in how we look, but also in the amounts that we eat. Did you know our plates today are bigger than they used to be 10 years ago? Okay? We now use our dinner plates for lunch, and they've created new plates for dinner. Isn't that neat? And so when you see that big plate and the pasta fills it all up, there's a reason it fills it up, because your portions, you're asking as a consumer, if you're going to pay $10, $15 for an entree, you want to make sure you get enough food, right? So they're trying to do their best to please us. So 20 years ago, this is what food looked like for pasta. And today, this is what it looks like. Here were our hamburgers. Here they are today. All right? It's not because they have more lettuce in there. All right? That is definitely bigger, and the buns are bigger. Somebody said that they made the smaller, the little slider buns, because we had gotten our buns so big that people were like, you know, how am I going to eat all that? So the sliders were something now that they came out so that people could eat 2 or 3 and not feel so. Even our donuts are bigger. All right? So if you look at that as well. That's from National Institute of Health, where they've actually looked at that. Our drinks have taken a huge hit. Our drinks are much, much bigger than they used to be. French fries here, and our French fries, we have all kinds of options, right? We have all kinds of options. Now we have those good old waffle fries, and, you know, Chick-fil-A has those wonderful fries, and then you can get that wonderful Chick-fil-A sauce to dip them in. So we have all kinds of options. We can also get chili cheese fries. Anybody had those at the Ranger games? All right, you can put chili and cheese on them, all right? And you can get extra cheese on your nachos, because one serving isn't enough. All right, here's our sandwiches. We all know Subway, all the other places out there that we can get their sandwiches. We can pick how much we want on them. We can decide what we want. If it's healthy, not healthy, whatever, that's okay. But the moral of the story is our sandwiches are bigger. This is like 1/6 of a club sandwich today. If you go to, you know, any of the restaurants where you can order, you're going to get a lot of these. You're going to have 2 servings there, if not 3. Portion distortion in a little bit different perspective, looking at how big hamburgers and how big we now have pizza, we have crust, we have cheese in our crust, but they didn't take the cheese off the pizza. That's the good news. You know, I was thinking if they took the cheese off the pizza, that might not have been so bad, but now we have cheese in our crust and on our pizza. What a deal. We have our pasta. And we have, oh, don't even go there on our drinks and our coffees, right? And our mocha chocolates and all that good stuff. And then muffins. Anybody like muffins? Anybody like those muffins from Sam's at Costco? Those mammoth muffins? Those are awesome. And then cookies. We not only can get one cookie, we can get big cookies. And we can choose which cookies we want. So all of this did is to tell us, and just I'll give you the good news, is that washing a car for 1 hour and 15 minutes burns about approximately 220 calories, and this is 220 more. So those of you that still wash your cars, there you go, okay? So the good news here is that if we want it, it's out there. They'll deliver it to us, right? We can get it. But we got to think about what's the trade-off for that, all right? We were just talking at break about how sometimes when we start exercising and we're watching the calories on the treadmill and we're like, really? Only 300? Really? And I'm thinking, 300 calories? I could have downed whatever it is, you know. It makes you more aware. So if you're concerned about that, if you still want the big muffin, that's fine. But then you're going to have to vacuum for 1 hour and 30 minutes, or you're going to have to find an activity that's going to burn it off, or just get the smaller muffin, okay? So, whatever. When we look at portion sizes, you know, we used to talk about portion sizes, and we really kind of weren't sure what that really meant. Now when you go back and you look at 3 ounces of chicken, it looks like you're underfed and undernourished, and that, you know, they should at least give you your money's worth, right? All right? 3 ounces of chicken is about like this. When you look at a tablespoon and you look at, like, what does a 3 ounce muffin or biscuit look like? It's like a hockey puck. Well, you know, that's not a very big hockey puck, right? 1.5 ounces of cheese. How many people eat 1.5 ounces? Do you cut the little sliver off the block of cheese and make sure and weigh it? It's 1.5 ounces. Or you can look at like 3 dice. A cup, like a baseball. 1 ounce or 2 tablespoons. That's what we're supposed to have in our peanut butter. That would be like a ping pong ball or almond butter, whatever. CD, 1 ounce of lunch meat, and then half a cup is kind of like a light bulb. Don't like put it up there. I just want to give you kind of a gauge to help. Some normal things that people might know and look at to help them with that. And that's from Healthy Eating WebMD. So, where do we go from here to lunch? I think that we have to first recognize that whatever we do on a daily basis is going to probably carry us through. So if you're one of those people that's like, you know, I eat pretty well, you know, and I'm really not ready to cut the crap yet. Okay, that's good. So you know that. You've been made aware. You can help people to start to think about it. You can help people to start to look for hidden things that have sodium, sugar, and all that stuff in it as well. If you want to make a step and start, you can start to think about, where would I start? What would I do? How would I do it? Be aware of what you eat, how much you eat, those kinds of things as well. The websites that I have here, I will post a slide for you because I want you to have the hyperlinks, because I don't want you to have to type that in or cut and paste it. But I will post a slide for you under the nutrition information. These are just some PDF handouts on some of the information I talked about today. Again, I'm not real paleo biased, but she does a great job of explaining to you good carbs, bad carbs. Paleo, if you're concerned about gluten, we didn't really touch a lot on that. Cooking fat, it tells you a lot about what oils are better on high heat, low heat, and why. And then if you're one of those people that's like, I want to start in on this clean eating stuff, or I want to just start to look at my pantry and see how bad it is, or if it is bad, she starts to help you think about what would you put in your pantry and how would you do it. So those are some things to think about.